This is me walking through the door with my ego. I'm like, this ego is coming with me through the door. Then when I had to check my ego at the door, I was like, I'm sorry, you can't come. Wait for me outside. And then when I get in the door, I'll just do like one final look back. I'll miss you. Hey, what is up? Kate the Great here. Welcome back to my channel. It's really nice to have you here. Yes, you read that right. 6 years. 6 years that I've technically been injured. Looking back on it, I think that it made me a better trainer and it made me as great as I am today. Did I think that at the time? Definitely not. But you know, things happen, whether you can change them or not. They are a part of my journey. So I want to bring you along through the injuries that I've had in the past, the injury part of my journey. I have like a 10-year fitness and health journey, and this is just one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, parts of your journey affect others. The injuries definitely played a big part in all of that, but it's not the full story. And this part I wanted to share today. I'm also going to give you all of the tips and the lessons that I've learned along the way, whether they were a lesson that I learned 6 years ago or a lesson that I learned yesterday. I also wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into how I am currently training, what my path is, what I typically do, and just to give you a better understanding of who I am personally and how that has translated into making me such a great trainer. Wow, did that sound helpful or what? Before we start, please give this video a like and subscribe down below. It really helps to support me and my channel, and so you can always come back and follow along my workouts, my tips and my tricks, my journey like this one. And my journey started about 10 years ago, well actually about 11 I guess now. As I talk through my journey and this video and injuries that I have sustained, I am fully aware that it could have been way worse than what I had. I know that people struggle. I know that there's a lot of people out there who just have just like a little injury in their knee, and if this helps someone, then that is great. And I try to translate that into my training as well and teach people the way to properly move their body using all the things that I've learned. This is my journey, my injuries, my tips and tricks, everything that I've personally learned in my own life and translate it to my training. Let's rewind it back to 6 years ago, plus like 6, 7 or 8 years prior to that. I have a hypermobility syndrome, or I am hypermobile in a lot of my joints and my bodies. Over the years growing up, my shoulder would subluxate, meaning that it slips out of the socket. Over time it would just slip out, it would slip back in, I would be in some pain, and then a month after I would basically bounce back. But over time, where 6 years ago comes in, it popped out, came back in, and then it eventually just tore. I tore my labrum and my rotator cuff, and once we had gotten the results back from the MRI, my doctor was like, okay, you're in surgery a week later. It took me about a year to recover from that shoulder surgery to basically get back to where I was. And then that's kind of how everything started. From then on, I had gotten bicep tendonitis, patellar femoral syndrome. I feel like that one's hard to say. PFS, a stress reaction, almost like a stress fracture in my foot, a ganglion cyst, and then I had sesamoiditis in my big toe as well. At the time, my low back had started to hurt, but the foot was more painful, so I put a lot of my focus into that and getting that healed. And then in the more recent years, I had a bulged disc in my low back, and then I was also informed that I have arthritis in my low back as well. I'm currently recovering from that low back injury. And I wanted to ramble off those injuries just so you know the locations on my body where I essentially had to regain function in that area and then prevent it from happening again. Going back 6 years ago when I was recovering from my surgery, I had just finished college. I got my degree in exercise science and adult fitness, so training was something that I always wanted to do, and I'm very lucky that I've always wanted to do it. I am good at it and that I love it. While I was recovering, I was able to study for my training certification, and then I got certified, and then I started my training journey. It's also ironic that I've been injured so many times, because people all the time will say to me, well, how could you be injured? You're a trainer, don't you know what you're doing? It's definitely tough to take take that in because, I mean, I agree with them. I should have known what to do, right? But sometimes when it's yourself and you have to pull yourself out of yourself and then look at yourself, wow, I just said yourself a lot. You sometimes don't really know what's going on until you look at the bigger picture. That brings us to lesson learned number 1, which is when you have pain, it is your body telling you that something is up. And even though I knew that I was injured at the time, you must seek help right away. Don't try to correct it yourself. Like when I had become a trainer, I was thinking, well, I'll just help myself because I know what I'm doing. And yes, I do know what I'm doing and I've been able to help so many other people, but it's different when it's yourself. And I didn't realize that as much until time had gone on and I was like, what's going on? I'm doing everything I can. I'm doing everything I know, except I needed someone on the outside who was looking at that way that I functioned in order to help me. And what I was doing wasn't good enough. That segues us into lesson number 2. The aches and pains, or the small pains, or things that just always hurt. Those pains that are just always there shouldn't really always be there. For example, people who just have low back pain, or you lift really heavy and the next day your low back is feeling it. Those aren't things that should always be there, and you can't just override them in your head. There's something in the chain that's a little bit off, and it's your job to either correct it, figure it out, or seek help, like I said before, and get your body to function better. And I personally didn't ignore my pains or just think that they were things that will always be there, but I definitely wasn't as proactive in getting help as soon as I should have been. Lesson 3, trial and error. Sometimes you will seek out help right away and they might not be the best option for you. That happened with my back. I had trial and error so many different things, like me being number 1, which obviously was an error. I had seen some other PTs and they just weren't for me. But the current program that I'm following is definitely working, and it's great to finally see progress and pain relief. Don't expect the first thing that you try to work, and if it does, honestly, that is so great and I'm so happy for you. But if it doesn't work out and you give it time, definitely give it time. Just ditch it and then move on to something else that will hopefully work. Lesson number 4, the cause of the pain or the injury is not always the site of where the pain is. I didn't learn that until the injury in my foot, where I was informed that my gait walking was off and therefore my gait with running was off. And I, at the time, was doing a lot of running, a lot of sprints, which was so fun, but with my gait being off, I was walking like on the outside of my feet, and then I had gotten the stress reaction from that and the sesamoiditis. It's all about looking up and down the chain, which is something that I really focus on with my training now. If someone has a compensation somewhere, I will look up and down the chain. It's not always that specific site that will be the cause. You kind of have to go around it to correct it. For example, the thing with my foot, my right foot had the injury. My gait was off because my left glute medius was weaker than ideal. Ironically, for my feet, I did a lot of strengthening with my glutes, specifically my left glute. Lesson number 5. Sometimes when people have a lot of pain, or if they're very achy somewhere, they will stretch right away. And I definitely would do that in the past when I first started training. Say I had a pain in my hip, I would just stretch my hip because that just makes sense. But more often than not, aches, pains, injuries will be due to some sort of weakness, like I was mentioning earlier about my glute medius, or anywhere up or down the chain. It just depends on the person, but sometimes it's weakness or instability. In my case, with my hypermobility that I was talking about earlier, pretty often the cause of my injuries were lack of stability. More specifically, the back injury that I currently have, my disc bulge and really the arthritis, is due to instability of my core. So in past videos, like with the bird dog one or the marker pickups, where I have dabbled with mentioning my journey, and in my personal fitness and health journey, a lot of things that I currently work on are stability and just regaining function, being able to brace my core better. And that brings us right into lesson number 6. Our internal health and our mental health can affect so much of our physical health. Around the time with my surgery and everything after, my mental health went like, woo, crashing down. A lot of my stress and anxiety affected my physical health. Increased inflammation when I was super stressed, my back would hurt more. A lot of these things aren't coincidences, and I didn't realize that until a while later when I really focused on that. And then what I was saying about bracing your core, if I was struggling with gut health or bloating or having loads of sugar. I love sugar, but sugar doesn't love me. A lot of that would affect my ability to brace my core. And if I'm not bracing my core well, I have a huge lack of stability. And then that leads to malfunction somewhere with something that I'm doing, and then that will lead to the muscles being like, oh my gosh, Kate, what's going on? We're freaking out, we need to tighten up. And that's usually where the pain comes from, for me personally. Lesson number 7, check your ego at the door. No one's ego is as big as mine. I would walk straight through the door with my ego in tow. This is me walking through the door with my ego. I'm like, this ego is coming with me through the door. Then when I had to check my ego at the door, I was like, I'm sorry, you can't come. Wait for me outside. And then when I get in the door, I'll just do like one final look back. I'll miss you. And I didn't realize how much my ego was affecting my pain until a while after. And I had to sit down with myself and say, Kate, your ego is too big, drop it. And it wasn't until a while after that I had to really check my ego at the door. And I say that all the time now. When I'm training, I basically have to rip the ego off of my clients and just honestly tell them that we need to take a couple steps back, get down the basics, and work our way up, which is what I had to do with myself. That was a very hard talk because sometimes my ego was so big, didn't even fit through the door. That segues us into lesson number 8. You gotta stick with the boring stuff. It's just ironic that some of the most basic, boring moves that I do myself or I give to people are the ones that sometimes benefit us the most and that will help us so much in our heavier lifts or being able to do much more compound, tougher things. And I love a good killer workout. I am all about flipping tires, pushing sleds, pushing a car, lifting as heavy as I can, and just like exerting myself. I just love it so much. But I really had to tame it down and basically stop doing all of that in order for me to regain function, regain stability so that I can relieve the pain and then work my way back up. And that brings us into lesson number 9. This one, dare I say, might be the toughest one to do. Sometimes you have to just start from scratch. And it took me a long time to figure out that that's what I needed to do. When I had started the program that I'm currently in, I had to stop everything that I was doing. Of course, I do film stuff here and there for my channel and my Instagram and everything in general, and I can do those things, but with my actual personal workouts and my personal goals, I had to go way back to the start, regain function, and then work my way up. And that was a really hard thing for me to do, but I love it. I love going to the gym. I love lifting. I love doing things that are really hard and that exert me to the max. But I had to tell myself that I can't be afraid to start over. I can't be afraid to start from scratch, and it will benefit me in the long run because I'm so young. And people would say to me all the time, aside from the whole, well, you're a trainer, shouldn't you not be injured? People who I train that are older than me, they would always say like, oh, don't get old, you'll just get hurt. Or I have so many pains when I'm older, and I would think like, oh, I'm so young and I have so many pains right now, so how's it gonna be when I'm older? But me taking that step back is setting myself up better in the future. It's not fun, but it'll be worth it. And then being a trainer, when someone says that they have pain, or if I notice something with the way that they're moving and we need to strengthen other things or focus on things that aren't necessarily their goals, it's a tough thing to do. But I know that the lessons that I've learned in my personal journey will help them and give them a better opportunity to live a more functional life. So I kind of have to just like force it. And does that make me a bad trainer because I'm not giving the client what they want at the time? No, because I know that I'm helping them in the long run. And I know I'm not for everyone, and I know that I'm a great trainer. Obviously, I'm Kate the Great, but it's not just me who's great, we're all great. And it took me some time to get here. Lesson number 10, the last one. Keeping proper function and allowing your body to move in the most optimal way is going to be something that you might have to do for the rest of your life. My shoulder surgery that I had 6 years ago, I am still doing exercises to be able to keep it pain-free and function well for other exercises that I do. My suggestion is to continue to do basic foundational moves forever and think of them as moves that you will do to help everything else you do to be better. Check out this video here because I go over 5 foundational moves that have helped me along my journey and what I basically make a lot of my clients do in order to build that foundation and keep your body working functionally better to translate into everything else that you do. And here we are at the end. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for listening to all of the lessons that I've learned, taking a trip down memory lane, listening to my story, my journey, the injuries that I've had, and the lessons that I've learned from them, and how they have made me a better trainer. So in the bigger picture of it, as much as I hated it, looking back at it all, I think that maybe it was a good thing that I had sustained these injuries because it forced me to learn. It forced me to zone in and learn the kinesiology, the movement of the parts of my body that I injured, and then just being better at understanding how the body functions. Things happen, but I think that this was meant to be my journey because it has made me the trainer that I am today. And so I can share them with you, of course. I hope that you enjoyed the little bit of insight into my personal life, my journey, where I've been, where I am now, what my current training looks like, and then just, of course, getting to know me a little bit better, who I am, and the personal side of Kate the Great. For the record, it's not just me who's great, everyone is great. We are all great. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye! Here we go. We're not going to use that lesson 3. Continually, what the heck is that word? Continually, we're just gonna ditch it. That's a wrap.